are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome to Weather Watch on Germantown Municipal Television. I'm your host, Finnegan Gruggett, a student at Houston High School. Gary Woodall with the National Weather Service in Memphis is here to talk about how technology has improved forecasting, and later in the show, we'll talk about the Skywarn Spotter Program. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Absolutely, Finnegan. Appreciate you having me.
So would you explain your daily role at the local National Weather Service office here in Memphis?
Sure. I'm what's called the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the office, and basically that's a big long title, which means that I oversee all of the external activities of the office. I work with the TV meteorologists, also the emergency management and emergency response officials, not only in the Memphis area, but all across the Mid-South. I also lead the severe weather education and preparedness efforts. So again, pretty much all of the external activities of the office fall under my program area.
Do you also work any shifts where you're forecasting for the area?
Occasionally. While the external preparedness work and outreach work is the majority of my job, I do occasionally have to cover forecast shifts, mainly for if people are sick or on vacation or something of that sort. And also, of course, whenever we have severe weather in the area, we typically will have extra people in the office as well, helping with the extra workload of warnings or helping with the communications into and out of the office. And so I'll occasionally be tapped to help out in those capacities as well.
Have you always been with the National Weather Service in Memphis, or have you worked at other areas?
I've been in the Weather Service for just about 28 years now, and most of my career was actually in the state of Texas. I went to graduate school at the University of Oklahoma, and after that started as a meteorologist intern at the office in Midland, Texas. After about 2.5 years there, went to the office in Lubbock, Texas, where actually I got my first full-time job in sort of the preparedness and outreach field. And that's just about where I've been my whole career outside of that. After Lubbock, 16 years in 2 different positions in Fort Worth, Texas. 5 years out in Phoenix, Arizona, which was, of course, a very different weather regime than what I'd been used to, and been here at the office in Memphis for just over 2 years now, and really enjoying my time here in the Mid-South.
So what are some of the differences in forecasting of the weather, say, from Texas to here in Memphis?
Between here and Texas, there are actually more similarities than differences. Of course, both areas are very active as far as tornado potential and severe thunderstorms are concerned. A little bit more humidity here in the Mid-South, a little bit more just kind of brute warm temperatures in Texas, especially the Fort Worth area. But very challenging as far as forecasting winter weather, because here in the Mid-South, just like in North Texas, it seemed like we would always be in that transition area, not quite sure if we were going to get just cold rain or freezing rain or sleet or snow. So really the similarities were much more than the differences.
Now, what type of equipment do you have available at the office to assist in forecasting?
Well, our backbone computer system is called AWIPS, the Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System. We make acronyms for everything in the Weather Service and the federal government. But the AWIPS system lets us bring in all the data sets, all the information that we need to do our jobs. It brings in the radar data, the satellite images, the data from the balloon observations, which are taken at about 80 locations across the country. aircraft observations, the computer forecast model output that we look at, also the software that we use for developing our forecasts and for preparing and issuing the severe weather warnings as well. So AWIPS is really the backbone, and again, from that we can access all those other data sets, again, the satellite radar models, etc., that are so important when it comes to producing a good forecast.
So how many people do you usually have working a shift? Does it depend on the weather?
It does to some degree. We have a total of 24 on staff, 10 core forecasters, and they're the ones that really are the backbone of our operations. And we will always have at least 2 forecasters on duty around the clock. Of course, weather doesn't take nights or holidays or weekends off, so we always have to have people there watching the weather and making sure we can keep everybody safe and keep that good information flowing. But when we do have a severe weather or hazardous weather event, a major winter storm or a tornado or severe thunderstorm outbreak, we will usually bring in extra people because there'll be a lot more communications that takes place, briefings to the emergency officials at the local and the state level, monitoring our social media channels for information coming in and putting information out over social media as well. So there's a lot more workload that comes with hazardous weather, and so we do have to staff up our operations to be able to meet that workload and provide those good services.
So what are some of the different platforms that you provide your weather information on?
Well, we put out the information through our standard means, dissemination means that would go to the TV stations and the radio stations, for example. We also, though, have a web page, and all of our forecast and watch and warning information goes to our web page. We have NOAA Weather Radio, which of course we recommend everybody have to find out if we issue a severe weather watch or warning for their area. The broadcast software that generates those broadcasts is contained within our AWIPS workstation as well, our AWIPS system as well. And we also are now getting more and more into social media, which of course is old hat for a lot of people now. But we do have a Twitter feed and a Facebook page, and we post a lot of information there. We also have a YouTube channel, and we will prepare either briefing videos or safety videos or documentary videos about what goes on at the office and put them up on our YouTube channels as well. So some very traditional, old school ways to get the word out. Again, weather radio and just our normal text dissemination that goes out, to some fairly newfangled ways, again, the social media channels that we're using now.
Now, have there been any major improvements in the way you guys forecast over the past decade with the improvements in technology?
There have been, and you nailed there with your question what we've seen, and that's the improvements in technology. In particular, improvements in our computer capabilities. Now, not just at the forecast office with the AWIPS system, but at our national modeling centers, we have extremely powerful supercomputers, and we've upgraded those computers in recent years, and that's let us make the computer models, the programs that help us forecast the atmosphere, much more robust and much more realistic, much higher resolution. We are able to approximate some of the rules that the atmosphere follows as to how clouds get produced and how rainfall gets produced. We're able to approximate those much better than we could before. We're able to run models that will actually show individual thunderstorms, which is something we could have only dreamed about maybe 15 or 20 years ago. So technology, and in particular the computer horsepower, has helped us with the better model guidance, and then having the improved workstations at the forecast office is really letting us do a better job visualizing that output and letting us slice and dice the data in ways that we couldn't before.
Well, we have to take a quick break, but we'll be back in a minute to talk more with Gary Woodall. Please stay with us.
Don't worry, 74 people were picked before me in the NFL draft. To fight childhood obesity, United Way and the NFL are helping kids play at least 60 minutes a day.
Okay, time for the team obstacle course. Yay!
What this place needs is more healthy kids. To get involved or donate, go to unitedway.org/play60.
Now I get it.
Mom.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. I'm Finnegan Gruggett and you're viewing Weather Watch. In this segment, we'll talk about the Skywarn program with Gary Woodall. So I want to focus a little more on the Storm Spotter program that we have here at the office. Is it just a local program or is it also available in other cities?
Yes, Skywarn is the name that we give to the Storm Spotter program, and it is a national program. It actually has its roots back to World War II, in which a lot of our bases, Army Air Force bases and other military installations were in the Great Plains of the U.S., where they are vulnerable, of course, to tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. And so the military actually deployed spotters out around the bases to watch for storms or possibly tornadoes coming in and potentially affecting the bases. And so from that beginning, it's grown to a national program, a volunteer program of trained observers who will go out and observe the storms when they come in, not chase the storms. We can talk about that here in just a minute as well, but to observe the storms and then report in any visual or environmental clues that they might see.
So what are some of the things you want them to report into the National Weather Service, and what role will those reports play?
The storm spotters play an important role when we have severe weather, because we have the radar and the satellites and the computer workstations, the technological and electronic tools like we talked about earlier. But those electronic tools really only tell us part of the story about what's going on inside of a storm. The electronic tools cannot tell us about the visual storm structures that might be associated with a storm, features and structures that might suggest that a storm would have the potential for producing a tornado or some other form of severe weather. Excuse me. So the storm spotters can provide that visual information, those visual observations. Also, the storm spotters will provide ground truth as far as what is actually happening down at the ground underneath those storms. So the information that the spotters will provide will complement, we'll put that along with our radar and our electronic data, give us the most complete picture of what's going on with the storms, and then let us make the best possible warning decisions based on all that information.
So would you talk about the dual pole radar we've got in the past couple of years here in Memphis and how that could also impact the warning process?
Yeah, the radar that we use, it's what's called a Doppler radar, so it can not only tell us where is the precipitation and some idea as to how heavy the precipitation is, but it can also give us some idea of the velocities, the motions that are taking place inside the storm as well. And we've had that for 25 years now. About 2-3 years ago, though, we got this dual polarization or dual pole upgrade, as you mentioned. And that's been really significant because it lets us see more details about the storm itself. It will give us some idea as to the shapes and sizes of the particles that the radar is sampling. For example, are we seeing raindrops, or are we seeing hailstones, or are we seeing snowflakes? Are we seeing a bunch of little raindrops, or are we seeing a few big raindrops, which can, of course, be important in trying to estimate how much rain is falling from out of the storm. It can give us some idea as to how similar or how different those particles are. For example, are we sampling all raindrops, all snowflakes, or is there a mixture of precipitation that's going on in there? And probably one of the most extreme examples where dual polarization or dual pole can help us, it can actually in some cases pick up evidence of tornado debris that's been picked up and lofted up into the air high enough for the radar to be able to see it. And back on December 23rd of last year, we had the huge tornadoes moving through northern Mississippi. We were able to see debris signatures with those tornadoes, and that was confirmation to us that those tornadoes were on the ground and were causing damage. So the dual pole is a really, really important upgrade that we've got.
Did you guys have any spotters out in the area back on December 23rd?
We did. There were a number of storm spotters and storm chasers, people that are out there just for scientific or videographic purposes to document the storms. We were getting great real-time reports from the spotters and the chasers, and some of the people that were out in the field were actually streaming live video from their vehicles. So we were able to actually not only hear their reports and get their text reports, or the tweets and the information that they were posting, but we were able to see what they were seeing, and that was very helpful with the warning process. Because again, instead of just having to say radar has indicated a tornado, we're able to actually confirm that yes, spotters are following a tornado and it is on the ground and it's moving in this direction. And that confirmation really helps motivate people in the path of the storms to take the protective action that they need to.
So in the warning text, you would actually put that information in and hope that it persuades people, if they aren't already going to their shelter, to make them go towards their shelter?
Absolutely, absolutely. We've found that if we just say that radar's indicated a possible tornado, for example, well, people would probably start to pay closer attention, but they may or may not head to their shelter. But if we can tell people that yes, the tornado is on the ground and it's doing damage, then the social scientists have shown that yes, that absolutely motivates people to do what they need to do to protect themselves.
So how often are these training sessions?
We conduct about 15 or so training sessions in the spring and about 15 again in the fall. We actually cover 57 counties from out of our office in Memphis. So we have sort of a 2-year rotation to be able to get out to all of our counties within a 2-year period. And again, about 15 or so in the spring, about 15 or so in the fall. We'll actually start scheduling the spring 2017 classes here in the very near future, and we'll actually conduct those classes in the late February through early April time frame. And once we get the schedule set, we will put it up on our website, and we'll be sending it out through our social media channels. So if folks want to come learn more about severe storms and how they can help keep their community safe by providing those spotter reports, then we certainly encourage folks to come out and take one of the classes.
We have to take a quick break right there. We'll be back right after this. Please stay with us.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund reading.
No.
Let me try. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out words.
Playing world music.
What?
I give up.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed our world.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. We want to spend our last moments talking about what role amateur radio plays into the decision-making at the National Weather Service. So exactly what role does amateur radio play with the National Weather Service?
Well, a lot of the Skywarn storm spotters that we mentioned a few minutes ago are also amateur radio operators. And amateur radio is a great way for the storm spotters to communicate, not only with each other, say within their particular county, But because some of the amateur radio bands cover very long distances, that can be helpful for relaying information, say, from one part of the Mid-South, northeast Arkansas, for example, or northeast Mississippi, into our office. So the amateur radio spotters are very well organized, they're very trainable, and while anybody can be a storm spotter, the spotters that are amateur radio operators have that extra added benefit of a good communication system to be able to relay information to our office and then pass information through their counties as well.
So do you guys have amateur radio operators at the office when severe weather is possible? And then do they relay the reports to the meteorologist?
Yes, in some cases we will actually have operators at the office. We actually have a team of amateur radio operators that provides direct support to us. Now, if it's a lower end situation, we're expecting maybe just one or two large hail incidents, for example, they will actually monitor the local ham radio networks from their home and then send the reports to us through a secure chat room that we have. But if it's a higher end event, December 23rd of last year is a good example, then we will actually have the amateur radio operators come into our office, and they will then provide that information to the meteorologists that are issuing the warnings, looking at radar, so that way they can, again, integrate the spotter reports with the electronic data and use that in our warning decisions.
So did you get any reports on December 23rd through amateur radio?
I believe we did. And yeah, we've had several events since then and have gotten reports from the amateur radio spotters, so they're very important as well. Another important role that the amateur radio operators would play for us is in the event we had a major disaster here in the Mid-South, the New Madrid fault goes and we have a big earthquake or a major communications outage. If that were to happen, most of our traditional communications would probably be down. Telephone, cell phone, internet would probably all be down. But amateur radio is a very robust communication system, and they're very self-contained, and they may be our only lifeline, our only communications line out of the office. Back in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana, the New Orleans office was basically cut off, and amateur radio was the only communications they had out to our regional headquarters to let them know how the office was and what supplies they needed and the like. So ham radio is a very important communications tool for us.
How has social media evolved? Do you guys get more reports now since we have Facebook and Twitter? How has that evolved?
Yeah, it's definitely been a learning process for us, but we are gaining a lot of knowledge and experience with social media, and it's really been beneficial because we can monitor. We actually, during severe weather, will set up to monitor several Twitter streams and looking for various hashtags, Tennessee weather or severe or Mississippi weather, for example. And that's really important because we can get a lot of not only text information, but of course pictures and video clips through social media as well. So on one hand, it has been a little bit of a challenge because there's so much information coming in and you don't know if it's coming from trained spotters or not. But on the other hand, it has been a lot of information that's come in, and it's really sort of a good complement to the trained spotter reports that we get. It also has opened up the door for two-way communication and dialogue with our customers and our partners, which is something, as far as the public is concerned, that we really haven't had before. And that part's taken a little getting used to because we've been kind of isolated for so long that now being able to have this direct conversation with individuals that are out there, it's been again a little bit of a learning process, but I think everyone's really seen the value of it, and it's definitely something we're going to continue to push in the future.
So after a tornado is pushed through an area, are you guys the ones that go through and do the damage survey?
Yes, we will go out and do the damage surveys following tornadoes, or if we get a report of wind damage that we're not sure if it was a tornado or straight line winds that caused the damage, we will go out and do the surveys. And typically what we're looking for, we're trying to find where the damage began, where it ended, and then we will look at the overall characteristics of the damage path. Is it a long and skinny path, or is it kind of a short and fanned out path? Do we see evidence of winds that were blowing maybe across the direction of motion or up against the direction of motion of the storm? And use that to try to determine if it was a tornado or straight line winds. And then we'll look at how much damage, what was the extent of the damage, in particular to any buildings that might have been hit, and use that to try to estimate the wind speeds, and then if it was a tornado, estimate the EF scale rating, EF2 or EF3 or whatever it would work out to be.
So once you have those damage surveys, do you send them off to any federal partners or the insurance companies to help the families that have been affected by the tornadoes?
Yes, when we're out in the field, we actually have an app on our iPad that we can right there input the data points and take a picture of the damage, and it uses the GPS for the exact location. And so we will upload those points to a national database, and once we've gone through and QC'd those points, they will be made public where anybody can see them. Then we also prepare a document, a monthly document called Storm Data, which we talk about all the hazardous weather events that occurred in our 57 counties that month. And in there we'll have a detailed narrative and description of the tornado or whatever it was that we went out and surveyed. And that becomes part of the official climate record then. So insurance companies, research institutions, anybody and everybody would have access to the data at that point.
Okay, and then that goes into a database where you can see, say, all the reports in a day if there were a severe weather outbreak?
Yes, and actually there are a couple of different sources for getting those reports. The Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, they're the ones, of course, that issue the tornado and severe thunderstorm watches for the country. Well, they also monitor severe weather reports, and so when we put out reports, it will be in a little short text, kind of a micro blog that we put out called a local storm report. That'll go to the Storm Prediction Center. They'll plot it on a map on their website. And then the more detailed reports will, yes, again, go out into the databases where people could query and see exactly what happened in a particular area and on a particular day.
And does that help with educating the public? Do you guys go in areas that see more severe weather and do more training sessions, or is it just where you go to different locations depending on the year?
As far as our county visits and our Skywarn programs, that's pretty much a standard rotation that we have set up, because every place in the Mid-South is vulnerable to tornadoes and severe storms. But it does help as far as the research is concerned, because it has shown even within the Mid-South, there are areas that might be that have had in the past anyway, a little more tornado activity, maybe a little more hail activity in other areas, and a little more winter weather activity in other areas as well. So it's neat to look at from that respect, but certainly every place here in the Mid-South is vulnerable to all sorts of hazardous weather. So we all need to be on guard and ready just in case that threat materializes in our area.
Well, thank you for coming out to the show. I appreciate you coming out.
You bet, Finnegan. Appreciate you having me.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. I'd like to thank Gary Woodall for taking the time out of his day to be on our show. If you'd like to learn more about this show or simply watch more of our programs, please visit www.gmtvonline.org. Until next time, this has been Finnegan Gruggett for this month's edition of Weather Watch.